Hello everyone, welcome back to Old Soul Podcast. My name is Bree, that's spelled B-R-E-I. Thank you so much. Today I wanted to talk about the issues that I have with remakes, adaptations, and sequels. Mostly remakes and sequels. And this conversation stems from these two films that I watched recently. One last month, so it's not been that recent, but fairly recent for me. And then one that I watched like 2 weeks ago. And those films were Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and Mulan, the live action film that just got released. And it actually got released forever ago, but Disney Plus just took off the access thing where you would have to pay an extra $30, which I wasn't going to do. I'm already paying for Disney Plus, and then adding the extra $30 is ridiculous, especially if I'm not watching it in theater. I just wasn't going to do that. So finally, when it was off and I could watch it for the regular price that I pay Disney Plus for, I was very disappointed. And I'm not surprised that I was disappointed because I did go and look up, I wouldn't say spoilers, but a lot of the reviews and some videos that I watched that sort of spoke about the film were not good. They just were not good. But I am not one to not watch a film because people don't like it. I just like to hear other people's opinions, and then when I watch it think, oh, I can kind of see where they were coming from, or no, I still like it. So it's just good to have other perspectives and opinions. I just genuinely enjoy that. But they were right. I think the issue, first of all, with live action is that it's not creating anything new. That's my issue with it. I feel like you already have a fan base, and they already are very devoted to the original classics. So when I say that, The Lion King, Mulan, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, all the ones that were essentially remade into the live action form that had a very, very, very good reviews for their original classics, because the classics were incredible. So when you do the live action, whether you do it exactly how the classics were with the slight difference of better cinematography, maybe sometimes they changed the music, they recast, obviously, because the originals are animation and mostly just voice narration, voiceover, so on and so forth. So obviously they have real in-person actors. Not the case for The Lion King, where a lot of the things were just CGI, better cinematography, and still having voiceover narration. Either way, they're really just the same thing in a new year for a new generation. So yes, that could be seen as a positive aspect for that, but it's not enough for me. I genuinely don't understand the point of live action remakes. And the thing is, I would respect them a little more if they did try to be a little more original and different, and it worked. So what I'm seeing with live action is that they're trying to make something different and original, and it's not working, like Mulan tried to do and failed at. And then they're also completely making live actions like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King that are almost exactly like the original. Almost exactly, or just totally exactly, and it doesn't give me anything new. It's not necessarily bad. So The Lion King, I actually enjoyed The Lion King, but it was just The Lion King, I'd seen it a million times. This was just a newer spin with a good cast, and they just sort of re-recorded the music. Okay, so cool, but it didn't give me anything new. Personally, I like for directors and creators to to make films, by them. Of course, there's a million ways to have a romance, to have a teen movie. We've seen all of them, and they're going to keep coming, but at least if they're coming, it's coming with a new style, a new perspective, a new director. Not everyone is the same. Okay, we have the basics, the bones of the story, and we go from there. But there's just something about live action that doesn't make that possible. Does that make sense? And with remakes in general. Okay, so, and with Aladdin, if Will Smith had not been in that movie, I probably would have left the theater. Like, I literally did not like Aladdin either. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that it was literally just Aladdin, and I could have just watched the classic and had a better time. So yeah, with Mulan, they tried to do, oh God, what did they try to do? I felt like the actors felt very real in that they weren't over glamorized, idolized, too perfect, right? And in a way with princess films, although I don't really know, like Mulan wasn't a princess, but she gives that very beauty-esque feel, but like in such a cool, daring way where she's improving and growing. Her whole storyline is incredible in the classic. I'm assuming that you know her storyline, so yeah. And then they give us the live action and they take away the best parts. And then they don't replace them with anything substantial and new or interesting that makes sense at all. So they have the witch sort of person that they throw in, which I think had potential but wasn't very well thought out. And then they have a lot of the original concepts in some of the songs, but they're more just instrumentals. They're not actually the characters belting out in musical form, which was great in the classic, but and I feel like the film tried to take itself serious. Like, it's not that Mulan wasn't serious and that they didn't take themselves serious in the classic, but in the live action, it seems like they were trying to make it more serious, because in Mulan there were definitely moments with Mushu, the dragon, the ancestors using Mushu to sort of watch over Mulan, so on and so forth. But it was funny and it was great. And this one doesn't do that in the same way, and it doesn't add anything. So it was just weird, and there was like a phoenix. I think it was a phoenix. I don't really know, guys and girls. I don't know. I really don't know what was going on with the film. And the family dynamics, like, it was cool when the family was together, and like, you understand that there's like this weird, insane amount of sexism, and that's like sort of a part of the story because she's like the only kid and she's a woman, and obviously her mom can't go, so then they recruit the dad, but then the dad is like, he can't go, he's much too old, he's weak, so on and so forth. But then they give her a sister. I don't know. I didn't like it at all. It didn't really make sense. There was a lot of potential that wasn't well thought through. I wanted to like it. I really did. This film really, I don't want to say it was set up to fail, because maybe it necessarily wasn't, but it's disheartening when you have a classic that's incredible and then you finally have a film that has some form of representation. Okay, I'm gonna say some form because there's some elements to it that are very stereotypical. Not anything really to do with the film or the cast, but just like Hollywood and how whitewashed Hollywood can really be. But and then there was like the political aspects offset, and then COVID. It just, I feel bad and I'm disappointed, and I don't want to harp on it too badly, but I also don't want to like sugarcoat it either. They did a thing, they made a movie, and that's really hard to do, and I can't even imagine being a director and all that pressure. And so I'm just gonna leave it with that and go ahead and move on to my little rant about sequels and adaptations, and then I'll steer into Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, the second film. And I'll explain why I'm going to talk about the second film and not just in general. I'll get into that. So, sequels. They don't ever do well, do they? I think the only sequels that I can definitely say did well when I was growing up or recently, Toy Story. I have not seen one bad Toy Story movie. No one can tell me different. Every single one of them is good. And that's really hard to do. So hard. The animation is immaculate. It is superb. Even the first one has great animation, and that came out when I was fucking born. Toy Story has memorable characters, interchangeable characters, new characters, different concepts, great adventure, great for families. It's just the OG of classics, okay? And sequels are all great. So there's a good one. I think Maze Runner and Hunger Games are pretty good in terms of sequels, and specifically for Maze Runner and Hunger Games, they're adapted from novels, so the novels are incredible. You can start from start to finish and still feel like you haven't had enough because it's so good, and like, why isn't there more, right? And then you watch the adaptations, them being adapted into films on screen, and the screen delivers. I think Maze Runner, all of the films were good, but I think for Hunger Games, the Mockingjay, like part 1, part 2, I think part 1 was kind of slow, but I don't think it was necessarily bad. I think it sort of made sense that it was slow. They're building it, they're sort of milking the last book for their like franchise, I'm sure, but still it was substantial, and I think that those are the two that I can think of right at the top of my head that I feel like do things differently with adaptation turned into sequel that other sequels just haven't been able to do. So, and I think like Finding Nemo and Finding Dory were also really good, going into more of the Disney, Pixar, branching into YA here, but those are the only ones in my head, and I think immediately that I can think of, and those are the only ones that I think that are worthy of being talked about, and that's pretty limited considering how many movies get released every year. And maybe you could say it you know, it could have a lot to do with like my personal taste and so on and so forth, but I really do try to study film, not just like studying it in school, but really just like watching film outside of just the entertainment value. But I also feel like you should also watch for the entertainment value. Like, does it give you a good balance? You know, those films aren't good, you know, and some of them took a lot longer to make than others, and I think sometimes that shows. Not always, but definitely in some of these. Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, Toy Story, those took a very long time to make, okay? So, and that goes without saying, it's animation, but also when were they released, you know? The first Toy Story and the first Finding Nemo before Finding Dory. So yeah, I think sometimes it speaks for itself, and sometimes time can be a virtue. Not always the case, but definitely sometimes, and especially with animation. I don't know if it's a lot easier now, but I doubt it. I bet it's still a really long process and very difficult. So props to those working in animation. It's fucking incredible. Yeah, you deserve a hand clap for that. So, going into Maleficent, I just want to preface? Whatever. I want to talk about how Maleficent is an underrepresented character. And I was talking about, like, the tropes of princesses earlier, and I'm so glad that they did not take the route of just, like, we're gonna make a Sleeping Beauty, blah, blah, blah. No, I love that they did Maleficent's background and story, which they get more into with the first film, which is also really good, and you should watch the first film before watching Mistress of Evil, the second film of Maleficent. But I'm talking about the second one more, and just like sort of stemming off of that one more in conversation, because it was great and I actually prefer it more than the first one. But the first one isn't bad. It isn't something that you won't enjoy. I just prefer that one out of the two. It expands more on what Maleficent is, who she is, coming from, sort of that sense. And it delves more into motherhood, and not in the very stereotypical way, just in like the realities of heartbreak and not fitting in, and lies, and how gossip and rumors can do a lot more damage than people think, and growing and learning. And sometimes you don't learn until you're just in the situation, you know. And I really like that Disney got dark with Maleficent in a way that I felt like would be very educational and very good for children to see. Maybe not young children, but definitely like a younger audience. I really don't like when things are super sugar-coated and like fairy tale. Like, that's cute and all, but I do think there needs to be a balance, and I think Maleficent does a great job with that. And then when you do have the like cute fairy elements, the fairies are adorable and funny, and they have their own little quirks and personalities. So I think it really is, like I said, a balance. And I liked everything except for the fact that someone gets married in the end. I'm like, oh god, they really had to do that. They really. And like also the thing where like they show you the wedding, in some sense it's like we know how weddings work. We also know how they mostly end in real life too. But yeah, anyway, that was weird and annoying, but the rest of the film was incredible, and life lessons, and dark, and humor, and I just love Maleficent's character. Angelina Jolie does great. Elle Fanning, Fannings, they're superb. And yeah, so I really hope that you got some stimulating responses in your brain from my self-discussion and commentary about Maleficent and Mulan. And again, I really started watching those films and branching out into like why I don't like sequels and why I don't like live action. And it's not always the case. It's just sometimes, most of the time, it just doesn't do anything for me, and it's usually done poorly. So yeah, you should think about this. Maybe, think about other sequels or films or things that you saw growing up that maybe I didn't mention, and think about how that was good or bad, or just another day for you to have a conversation. I'll leave you with that. Thanks.